Welcome to the ranking and distribution page, segment 2, focusing on the ranking and distribution rules and whether the district should use poverty ranking or grade span ranking. We should find this ranking of schools and distribution of funds page, and here it is. In the first segment, we learned about the eligibility of schools, and those eligibility rules somewhat aligned to the ranking distribution rules. So this is how this works. A district with less than 1,000 students or a district with more than 1,000 students but with only one school building at each grade level does not have to follow the rank and distribution of funds rules. All schools are eligible to receive funds, and the district may distribute Title I funds to eligible schools as it determines is most appropriate after a thorough needs assessment of its schools has been completed. Rank and distribution rules must be followed if a district has more than 1,000 students and at least one grade level with multiple school buildings. So in this example that we have on the screen, we have more than 1,000 students and we have more than one building at each grade level. Therefore, we must follow the following rules. The default setup for the ranking of schools and distribution of funds school chart is by poverty ranking. In column 4, it shows the highest poverty down to the lowest poverty. Let's review the rules for distribution to determine if poverty ranking will meet our needs. So the first rule says schools with a school level poverty greater than 75% must be served. So we have Pine Valley Middle School at 92%. So that school must be served with Title I funds. The new provision under ESSA says high schools with a school level poverty greater than 50% may be served in a priority span. So we have Pine Island High School at 57%. If you may decide and could decide to serve that school with the schools above 75% that must be served, as well as and then the Pine Valley High School cannot go in that category. But after a needs assessment, we have decided that Pine Island High School would not move to that level of priority. The next ranking rule says that the remaining funds may be served using continued poverty rankings, or the remaining schools may be sorted for grade span ranking priority. So some of the rules after this will help us decide if we can continue in the poverty ranking or change to grade span ranking. So it says the higher poverty schools must receive a higher or equal school level per pupil amount than a lower poverty school. And another rule says a higher poverty school should not be skipped to serve a lower poverty school. If this occurs, the LEA will most likely need to switch to grade spanning. So if we look at some of these rules and apply them to this spreadsheet, to this school chart, we find that Pine Island Middle School is at 70%, and we don't intend to service that school with Title I funds, even though it is eligible. So our next one is Pine Valley Elementary, and we are looking to serve that. So the rule says we can't skip a higher poverty school. And if we do, we will have to consider the grade spanning provision. And then we say a higher poverty school must receive the higher per pupil amount. So when we look at the highest poverty and their per pupil amount in the last column, is it being served in column 8 with a higher per pupil amount than the next poverty school that we want to serve? Pine Valley Elementary is being served based on its school level funding divided by its number of low income. It has a per pupil amount of $327. So it is lower than the higher poverty one. And you can continue down through. Is Pine Island Primary served at a lower level than the previous higher poverty school? And from 327 to 230, the answer is yes. But we've skipped another school. The next school, Pine Mountain Elementary, is at 241. Is that lower than the previous higher poverty school? The answer is no. So we also have an issue with that one. Then there's the 125 rule that says if we're servicing schools at less than 35%, along with schools greater than 35%, we must ensure that the school level per pupil amount in column 8 meets the 125% per pupil expenditure amount that's been calculated in our little chart in the upper left-hand corner. So that chart says we must ensure $218.76 per student in column 8. And we do meet that requirement as well. So when assessing if we can maintain our ranking by percent poverty, the answer is no. We must go to grade span ranking for this district. To change to grade span ranking from this poverty ranking, we need to click down at the bottom of the page, Change to Ranking by Grade Span. And this brings us to the grade spanning process. So what is our priority span? The first priority span that we have are those schools that are greater than 75% that we must serve. So we will place that school in the priority 1 grade span. That was one of our middle schools. So the low grade would be 6 and the high grade would be 8. And I believe it was, we'll try Pine Valley Middle School. That was our 90% school, and we will add it to that priority grade span. And then we go to priority 2 grade span. Our priority schools we would next go to our lower elementary schools. We'll call our next grade span a K-5 grade span because we believe our funds are better utilized in the lower grades. And click all the schools that are in the K-5 grade span regardless of their actual grade spans. And then we'll continue to isolate our schools by grade span. So we'll have a 6-8 because we have another middle school that has a lower poverty that we won't be providing Title I funding to. And then, of course, we have our 9, 12 grade spans. So the chart reformulates itself, regenerates itself based on those priority spans. So we have our Pine Valley at 92% as our first one, which is the one that we must serve based on that 75% rule. In order to, when you do reach that 75%, you could say, ooh, maybe I don't want to use the low income free and reduced lunch data that I chose. Maybe I should use my lower poverty numbers with just free lunch, and maybe these schools wouldn't reach that 75% level. But because this one does, we're rolling with using the 75% rule in this situation. Then the next grouping we said was our K-5, but because the grade spans are not actually K-5, we will adjust their grade span, their actual grade spans. So Pine Valley is actually a 3-5 school. Pine Island Primary is actually a K-2 school. And then we have Pine Mount, which is actually a 3-6 school. So once we make those changes, we will post an update. And then visit to make sure that our distribution rules have been met. So our highest school, poverty school, in the priority grade span, because of the 75% rule, is at $379. Highest school, highest per pupil amount, we're good. Our next span is our K-5 schools, and the highest poverty one at 61%, Pine Valley Elementary, is at $327. This starts a new grade span. It is below the highest poverty school in the first grade span, so the second span is starting at a correct level. The next school's per pupil amount is $230, so that is lower, equal to or lower than the 327. And then when we get to the next school in that second span, we have $241. So this one is a lower poverty school, and it's receiving more per pupil. Therefore, we have an issue. And to fix this issue, the district would have to go back to the school project pages and reduce the amount of money this school receives, and probably even then have to split the time the person works at that school versus the amount of time that person might have to work at the school where you moved these additional resources to. And so as we continue, we are not providing services or Title I services or resources to the other middle and high school. We would have to go back and adjust the amount of money Pine Mountain Elementary School receives, and when you do that, hopefully it needs to be below the $230. Once that change is made, this page would look correct. Since we haven't skipped any schools, the 125 rule we had to follow, and everybody was receiving above the $218, so that rule has been met as well. Additional information on this process is available on the U.S. Department of Education's website. It's non-regulatory guidance. It's located at www.ed.gov/program/Title I Part A/WDAG.doc. This concludes the second segment of guidance material on Title I ranking and distribution page as it relates to the rules of ranking schools and distributing Title I funds. For additional questions, please contact or reach out to your assigned ESCA Federal Programs Regional Team Manager.